and welcome to Women's World. I'm Deborah Prentice. Now, this is our last episode for Women's World Season 4, and we will be looking back on some of the stories we've covered throughout the season, stories of strong, inspirational Papua New Guinean women. Our first story, we feature the PNG Tribal Foundation, where Ruth Kisam tells us how they're responding to sorcery accusation-related violence.
Well, I have a personal story actually. So in 2000 and before I joined PNG Tribal Foundation, I took my dad to the hospital. It was in October of 2013, and I came across a circular from the morgue attendant saying that the OIC for the morgue saying that bodies have to be collected. And I went through the names of the 6 names that were there, and on the 5th one was written Meripaya Kukim Sanguma. And because I knew that there was only one woman in 2013 that was killed, and that was Kipari Leniata. So I called up the hospital morgue and I said, I saw a notice like this, and the notice was out in May, and this is October, and she was killed in February. Is this the same woman? And they said yes. And I said, has anyone claimed her body? And they said no, she wasn't claimed yet. So I said, okay, I would like to claim her body. And they said, the thing is, we don't know where she is in the morgue. We know that she's here, no one has claimed her, but the thing is, it's been 10 months now since her death. So they had to call me back in 2 days to tell me that she was found, but that that she was unclaimed. So I said, okay, I would like to bury her if that's okay with you. And they said it was okay. So I went through the old process, but the thing was that she didn't have a post-mortem, so she didn't have a death certificate. She didn't have a warrant to bury because it was a criminal case, and yet there was no arrest done, nothing of that sort. So it took me another 2 months going back between the police and the hospital, and finally about a month shy of a death anniversary, we buried her at a plot that was given to us by the Catholic Church. Father Casper from Rabiamo gave me that plot and said, look, you don't know her and I don't know her, and what you're doing is, you're doing a service to someone. But for me personally, I thought that everyone needs dignity. She died a very undignified death. But that doesn't mean that even her body has to be treated like that. So we buried her. Now last year in November, I got a phone call that told me that the woman that you buried, her daughter was tortured. And this was on a Wednesday, I remember so clearly. So I called up my friend Anton Lutz, and I said, this is what happened, because I wasn't allowed to touch a mother's body. I wasn't allowed to touch Kepari Leniata's body because people said that I wasn't related to her, and I lived in the same community, and that if I were to touch her body, then I would some kind of curses and all that. So that kind of belief. So I had to ask Anton to help me out, and Anton was the one that actually wrapped the body up because he was a white person. And so to put all those thoughts to rest. So I called him up again and I said, this is what has happened. And he offered on the spot. He said, look, let me go up to the village where it is. And I gave him the location of the village, and I said, I'm flying up the next morning, but you have to go because that's a 6-year-old child. And at the time of her mother's death, she was 18 months old or something. So, and this is a baby that grew up in a different community altogether, thinking she was safe. And then this falls on her. So Anton went up there, and the next 2 hours he was negotiating with the village people, telling them, you have to give me the child if she is still alive. And we found out that she was still alive. So he brought the child down. I went up, I landed in Hagen, and we met up there, and we got the child to safety. And for a week we spent at a hospital. And the Kujib Nazarene Hospital were very, very kind to us. They waived all the fees. They said you don't have to pay it. They put her up in a very safe place so that she could be, her burns can be taken care of. She was very badly burned. And at the time it was a week after she was hurt. She was tortured. They hung her up, they used knives on her, they used hot bush knives on her, and all the while telling her to give back her heart, and she didn't know what it was. This is a baby, a 6-year-old. And so when we were at the hospital, she couldn't even speak Pidgin, and I knew Enga, so we were both speaking in Enga, and she was telling me, and you could see her eyes, it was dead. And when we were there, she looked at me and she said, can we get on a plane and go? And I said, yes, we can. We can go on a plane. And so we did. A week after the hospital, we did. And we handed her over to people that are now looking after her and are keeping her safe. And we've got families that are now rallying with her, giving her an education, a home. Her scars have healed up so nicely. She's talking, she's learning English. But she's one. Imagine how many other kids that are going through that. Sorry. So this is one kid we've saved. But there's so many others that are still out there. And some of them have lost their lives. Some of them because their mother was killed because she was so-called a witch. And now the child is being tortured and killed because of that. And then you have there's a boy that we dealt with last week. His father, we rescued the mother in 2016. And now the young boy was badly beaten by the father because he's 4 years old and following his mother. And the father belted him up and tortured him because he was afraid that the kid was gonna get something from the mother. And these are children that we are working with and that have come into the system. But imagine how many children that are out there that have lost their lives because their mothers have been accused or their families have been accused. And there are many more. Imagine how many daughters are now facing the same thing. A woman called me up to tell me that she said, I'm a witch and that's fine. You know, people have labeled me as such, but my daughter is 17 years old. Now men are telling her, we can't marry you because you're a daughter of a Sanguma. We're having young girls that are being persecuted, young boys that are going to school as early as 5 o'clock because they don't want other people to see them on the road, and coming late home after school. They are talking with their teachers that they need to stay in class until after school is over so that when they get home, people are not going to see their face. So young children are now afraid of going to school because they've been labeled. We are not disputing people's belief. I'm not saying that people shouldn't believe in Sanguma. Whatever it is, if it's your cultural practice, that's fine. Whatever it is. But ask yourself this question. Is it good? Because we're destroying people's lives based on our so-called belief. We're destroying homes and we're destroying families. We're killing women who are marginalized. Our custom and our culture was never like that. Every witch in a community used to be a man and feared and revered by people. They left him alone because he was that kind of a person in the community that you knew. He has powers. But now, it's not that man that they're going after. It's that marginalized woman, that widowed woman, that barren woman. So yeah, it used to be a man in the community where everyone feared. That used to be our cultural belief around sorcery or a witch. But these days, it's always the marginalized women. It's either she doesn't have a son to protect her when they accuse her. It's either she's barren, she doesn't have children, so something is wrong with her. She couldn't bear children, so something is wrong with her. It's that woman that has, decided to have a child before she was practically married, so she's that scorned woman in the community. It's those women that are weak, that are powerless to protect themselves. It's always those women that they're going after. So it's definitely got nothing to do with culture at all. And for those cultures that are perpetuating it, they don't seem to have the cultural root to say that I'm passing blo mipla because I'm not passing to mana blo planti, blo culture work lo now kilimol merilungen. So this is one thing that that through Senisim Passing we are working in communities to sort of bring it out so people can be able to see that.
Welcome back to Women's World as we look back on some of the stories we've covered this season. Now, in our next segment, we look at PNG women in fashion as we talk to one of our pioneering fashion designers, Natasha Tamanabai.
I come from a mixed parentage of Oro, Medeng, and Morbe. I started out, my fashion line is called Baiwa Designs. I started sewing because I couldn't fit into my own clothes. So I started making clothes for myself and I put it up on Facebook and people started liking it, you know, the style, the design, but it was all in my head. So what I did was I just literally based half of my time on YouTube watching how to sew. So I taught myself how to sew. So I tried making bags. I ordered leather handles from China and I used actual tupper cloth. And it just went on and on and on. But the inspiration really came from, you know, growing up and wanting to represent my culture on clothing and seeing how it would look like. And
you have some interesting designs in your fashion line. Can you give us an insight into what they mean?
In 2016, when I eventually started making tupper bags, I was using tupper cloth from a friend who would make and sell to me in Tufi. But then I realized that I needed something deeper, with deeper meaning and all that. So I asked my dad if I could, you know, if he could make some designs for me. And my grandmother had a designer, a 4-decade-old design that she had. And she passed on to my dad to be the custodian. So my dad passed that down to me. He was like, since you're interested in it and no one else is, then I will give it to you. See what you can do with it. And those are the designs now you see on the famous Baiwa shoes and the dresses. Yeah, so the designs are from Binandere in Oro province, and the designs signify, or the meaning of those designs is of womanhood, sorry. So it's like a girl coming out of her youth into womanhood in preparation for courtship and marriage. So those are the meaning of those designs that I put out. That is why I called my line Baiwa. So Baiwa means butterfly. It's coming out of a cocoon to a butterfly. So that's just basically why I named my line Baiwa. Not just that, but because I believe that every woman who wears something should feel comfortable in it. And even though she's never dressed up in her life, every time she wears Baiwa, she feels confident, she feels new, and it feels good. Yeah.
We know that the fashion industry is relatively new. How difficult is it being a fashion designer in PNG?
It's really challenging and difficult for us local people who are making textile and trying their best to own small businesses and work, because we're competing with big supermarkets who have, you know, mass-produced our materials and our motifs and stuff like that. So we don't make enough money because everything that we want to produce that's our own is already sold in shopping centers for a lesser price. But obviously you can say, okay, yeah, you'll go and purchase a Tambaran lep or, you know, something with motu and tatu on it. You can just get a meter for 6 kina, and you know, if you sell something that's exclusive and of Baiwa, who's, you know, originality and everything that's put into it, for 30 kina, a lady on the street won't buy your stuff, you know. So one of the challenges for us is competing with, you know, the bigger supermarkets. And I don't mean to discriminate anyone, you know, but you know, it's I just feel that our stuff should be respected and sold back to us. But in the fashion industry, it's difficult to order stuff and have it shipped in containers because of the tax duty, and we can't, it's impossible, I would say. Impossible to order online, having things shipped here and all that. So we just make do with whatever we can. And you know, when you are able to expand and buy stuff and use things that are actually meant for what it's, you know, that purpose, you help yourself enhance your product. But in our situation, we can't be able to do that because of those economic situations, you know.
Natasha, do you think that women are pressured to dress in a certain way because of society norms, and that men play a part in the way women dress?
To be honest, it's sad, but we cannot control the mindset of men, especially in people who are slowly and eventually getting used to the trends now. And it's very sad to see that women are attacked just because of the way they're dressed, and that should not happen. And I feel that eventually when we get to a stage when people can understand that, you know, it's okay to wear something and walk around and not be harassed. But there's a great imbalance I see in the country with people in the cities and our people back at home, and the way they think about dressing is totally different. And having a country with so many people and so many cultures, and the way they think and perceive clothing especially, yeah, that's another challenge for us as well. So when I create stuff as well, I think of, you know, how people will perceive it on a woman. I want it classy, yet I want it conservative, and I want it acceptable in the society. So I do not want women to feel that, oh, I can't wear that because of that. You know, I don't want them to come back to me and say, hey, Natasha, the dress is, you know, all the way down here, you can show my cleavage, and my dad don't allow me to wear that. And I had several problems with that too. So I'm hoping that, you know, in the years to come, Papua New Guineans will change their mentalities and, you know, allow women and girls to wear what they want and feel comfortable in it. And we have a long way to achieve that, but it is sad that girls and women get attacked every day because of the, you know, the way they dress and the way they live.
Welcome back to Women's World as we look back on some of the stories we've covered this season. Now, we've looked at women in aviation, and we've given you an insight to the life of a female pilot. So here is her story.
My name is Cassandra Isa, and I'm currently a first officer on the Dash 8 aircraft with Papua New Guinea. I think when I was younger, when like we would travel overseas, I just loved the feeling of being up in the air and looking down at how marvelous God's creation was, and that's sort of why I thought being up here, you get, you know, the best view in the house basically, and that's why I wanted to be a pilot.
November, the ground cross 3 to the left.
Cassandra, tell us a little bit about how you started your career with Papua New Guinea, and how long have you been working for the airline?
Okay, so I guess my career started about 6 years ago when I put in my application to join the Papua New Guinea's pilot cadet scheme program. So that was back in 2012. I was second year at the University of Papua New Guinea doing a Bachelor of Science in Physics. And yeah, so I put in my application to join the program, went through the process, and then was successful. So in 2013, I was sent with 7 of my colleagues down to Coffs Harbour where we started our training. Yeah. And yeah, it took about 18 months in Coffs Harbour, and then we came back in 2014, and I've been working with Any Guinea since then. Yeah.
Cassandra, give us an insight to your role as the first officer.
That's in our operating manuals that we do. The captain has their role, first officers have their role, and we just do whatever's in there. All my checks are in the aircraft. So the captain does the walk around, and I come in and I do my checks. Okay, there's in our manuals we have checks that we have to do that ensure that the aircraft's okay to go for a flight. There's minimum requirements that we have in our manuals. So some of the checks include checking that we have enough oxygen, that our radios are working, our nav aids are working, you know, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so we got nav aids. These are all the radios here. We usually fly what's in what we call the flight management system, FMS. All our flight plans are in there. So I've just put in a flight to from Mosby to Girwa, and we just follow what's in there. Yeah, so those are all the captain's instruments. These are all my instruments. And these are the engine instruments, so when we power up, we get our engine indications from here. And everything's connected, so captain usually does a walk around, check the condition of the aircraft outside, that there's nothing that could stop us from operating on that day.
How many places do you travel to in a day, and how many places have you visited so far?
It really depends on our roster, what we're rostered to do on that day. So in any one day we could do up to 6 sectors. So for example, here going to Papua New Guinea would be 1 sector, coming back is another sector. We could do a Goroka and back, that would be another 2 sectors. And then maybe Leh and back, that would be another 2 sectors. So we're up to 6 sectors a day. But yeah, it really depends on what you're rostered to do that day. So for the Dash 8 operations, we fly to most of the domestic ports around PNG.
How do you feel every time a plane takes off? How does it feel to be in control of a plane?
It's exciting every time we lift off. It's never the same. It's always a different feeling, but it is really good. You find joy in what you do, and yeah, I find joy in what I do in my job, yeah.
Cassandra, can you highlight some of the challenges you face as a woman, and how have you overcome them?
I guess initially, like as everyone says, it's a male-dominated field, profession. So at first, you know, there is that sort of, I guess, discrimination. Not so much, but a little bit. But I guess once you prove yourself that, you know, you do deserve to be here, you have what it takes to be here, then you get that respect from your colleagues that, hey, she's just one of us, yeah.
Cassandra, I am aware that you are also a mom. How do you juggle being a mom and being a pilot?
Okay. Not everyone can relate to what I'm saying. I know for mothers out there, they would understand how difficult it is to have a full-time job and be a mom. And especially for my case, you know, I get called out to go to work at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning and just leaving my little girl there. She's 1 year and 1 month now, and it is very hard. Leaving her and going to work, but I guess I find strength in knowing that she's being taken care of at home. And also, at the end of the day, I know that what I'm doing is for her, so that gives me the strength to go to work every day.
What tips do you have for girls who would like to pursue a career in aviation?
I guess education is the key, and if this is really what you want to do, put your head down, and you know, nothing is impossible. You can achieve it. Yeah.
that's all we have time for this season of Women's World. Don't worry, Women's World will be back again next season. That's around September. But you can still message us on our Facebook page, that's Women's World, and share any interesting stories that you have in mind. Until our next season, I'm Deborah Prentice.